Cross-cultural negotiations. What is negotiation? This concept of negotiation, it's the process in which at least one individual tries to persuade another to make a decision or sign a contract. Let's go on to this. Let me be clear. We are all biased. Everyone, it's natural to be biased. We are born super biased. We are born super prejudiced. It's just a fact of life. You are born and you only know one way. Your mother teaches you, or the doctor teaches you, your dad teaches you something. And anything that's not your mother's way, you don't understand. You think it's bad or strange. So we are born biased. We are born prejudiced. And so in order to negotiate well, you must admit it. You must overcome your bias. There are several types of bias you should know. There's confirmation bias, affiliation bias, Dunning-Kruger bias, cognitive dissonance bias. All of you, I hope you realize those things. You guys think you're good students, you think you're polite in class, but you have biases because you're raised in a certain way. The international managing culture way might be different from what you think is okay. So confirmation bias means finding evidence to support your existing belief. Affiliation bias is associating things linked to your culture as better than things that aren't linked to your culture. Dunning-Kruger is a research theory that shows you think you know more than you do. I will be the first to admit, Dunning-Kruger for sure, I don't know shit. I will say that. There's a lot I don't know, even though I have 20 years of executive experience and I have 30 years of formal university and educational training. But I admit I don't know a lot. Next, there's cognitive dissonance. That means your new info contradicts our existing beliefs. So you will try to find info contradicting our existing beliefs. So you will avoid those things that you think are wrong. So the first one, confirmation bias, you find things that agree with you. You have a natural ability to find things that agree with you. Number two, you think anything that matches you is good. Anything that doesn't match you is bad. Next, you think you know more than the reality. Last, anything that's different than you, you avoid. All of those are reality. You must be aware of those to do better with negotiation. Start by understanding who you are, then seriously try hard to understand the other person, and then understand the big picture. Simple things like silence can change the negotiation outcome. The idea that you associate things linked to Korean culture as good and better than things that are associated with other culture. That is affiliation bias. Anything that's connected to you, you are comfortable with and you associate with okay. Things that you are not aware of and you're not comfortable with, you think that is probably strange or bad. So that is a bias. That is a prejudice. Everyone has prejudices. How you manage it is important. If you accept that you have problems, if you accept that you're prejudiced, if you accept that you have biases, then you can do better with negotiation. So take inventory of your biases, evaluate your sources of information, and speak out. When we are identifying that we are biased, we have to identify our biases, make sure that we have reliable information like Scopus information, then we can negotiate well. Otherwise, you need to tell the other person that their material might be bad. But what happens? As soon as I tell you as a student, you're wrong, how do you feel? If I tell you in our negotiation that you're wrong, usually you get pissed off. Usually you get upset. And if you get upset, usually you get more angry, and it's harder to negotiate with you because you might hate me. That's why I say, if you argue with me or try to negotiate with me or even say I'm wrong, I encourage you to try. And I don't say, no, that's wrong, that's bad. By encouraging you and making you happy, it's easier to negotiate with you. So be aware of the quality of information, number one. But next, when you're doing cross-cultural communications and negotiating, there are many key variables. For example, there's the deal focused versus relationship focused. Some cultures are focused on a deal. Some cultures are focused on a relationship. North America and Europe are usually individual focused or deal focused, and Korea is relationship focused. Another idea is some cultures are direct, like North American or European cultures are usually direct, and Korea is indirect communications. So some cultures are informal versus others are formal. Some cultures are monochronic versus other cultures are polychronic. And then you have the reserved versus expressive communication. There's many different ways to describe cultures. And so I'm not going to talk too much about all of those things. I want to just point out a few other details related to getting to yes. So I'm going to summarize the most important things first to show Harvard is famous for teaching negotiation. They actually have a Harvard negotiation project, and it's this book called Getting to Yes. The name of the book, Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In, by these authors. This is a famous book. What does it say? It says there's many different ways to negotiate. What you should know, one of the most important things to know is BATNA. BATNA means don't just think he can be right and he can win, or this person can be right or this person wins. It's not that. Try to think that there's other things to negotiate. There's best alternatives to just negotiating. Maybe you want this and the other person wants this, but make sure you know there's many things you could offer and many things they could offer. And the more you have, the more alternatives you have, the better chance that you're going to have mutual benefit and a better negotiation result. So BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. Always try to think about that. Always try to learn. Just your one first thing is biased. Your one first plan is probably prejudiced. Your one first idea all on your own is probably not great until you research and understand the other person very well. Once you understand their initial response, that's a decent start. Like you want a job, right? Jung Sungjin and Jun Hedin, you want a job in a company. So you should understand about this company. Most students will just walk up to them after you graduate and say, here's my resume, can I have a job? And this person knows that there's millions or billions of people they could hire. They're going to think, why are you special? So you need to think, what are some other things they have that you could help with, work with, interact with, and what are some other things, rather than just say, here's my resume and I graduated, give me a job. Use things like, I am doing research with a group of people now. We have access to Scopus, very expensive, reliable information we could give you that you probably can't get on your own. The university pays millions of dollars to get this Scopus information. Just find that and give it to them. That alone is valuable. Or you could do more research. After you learn, he also wants this. He has to do this. This is part of his job. If you learn about those and start helping him, that will make a relationship with them, and you already have a working arrangement. So you already have a job. You're much better than anybody else applying for a job, even though you didn't graduate yet. That's why the class is set up this way. So think about best alternative to negotiated agreements. Next, separate the people from the problem. Because we are biased, because we're racist, because we're prejudiced naturally, you need to avoid just thinking about that other person because maybe you're biased. Just try to understand what is the negotiation situation After you know the negotiation situation, then you don't just think about one thing, you think about many things that they could offer and many things you could offer. Maybe the main thing that you're looking for doesn't match, but these other things do. So separate the people from the problem. Next, understand substantive parts. A big part of negotiation is your interest. So the other part is your interpersonal relationship. You need to understand what the other person wants and make sure you control the relationship between them. Even though you want a job with a company, right now, maybe you don't have a relationship with them. But if you understand what substance can you give to them or can you use to help them, then you will have a relationship. You create your own relationship. You create your own substance. What is that? That's your class term paper. Do not wait until you're ready to graduate. We have 17 people that have just graduated this semester. They're still looking for jobs. Those people that do have jobs, most of them used class activities to develop connections with companies. That's why our class is designed so you develop a specialization paper and you present everything to us at the beginning so you have research about the topic. And then in week 8, you can go talk to the company. Next, ideas related to negotiation. The people problem or the relationship problem usually is a problem from one or more 3 basic categories. There's a perception problem, an emotion problem, or a communication problem. Like I talked about, silence. Sometimes students in Korea are silent, and you might think because of your bias, because of your culture, you are just being normal. But almost anywhere outside of Korea, being silent is rude. It's actually very bad. That's why I take points off to try to help you learn the international style. And emotion. Usually, if you get too emotional, you will lose your ability to do well in a negotiation. Knowing emotion can impact the negotiation. Usually, if you get emotional, usually it's bad, because when you get emotional, you don't think clearly, you don't think wisely. But sometimes if I start yelling and screaming, why do you guys do that? It will help me get the negotiation. It will help me win the negotiation by pretending, by acting emotional or upset or angry. Many professors at the university, they say professors need to yell at students and get angry at students and give students penalties if they don't do things in class. But if you are emotional and not controlling your details and not controlling your brain and thinking negotiation abilities, then it's bad for you. So sometimes emotion can help you. Sometimes negotiation is hurtful for you. Same thing. Make sure you understand the perception. Next, the idea of focus on the interests, not the positions. We already started talking about that. Don't just think this guy is from Canada or this guy's from China, so he must think this. Make sure you understand what exactly are their interests. Do the research. Next, make sure you understand the most powerful interests relate to the basic fundamental human needs. So the human needs are security, economic well-being, sense of belonging, recognition, and control over your lives. These type of things you must be aware of because they strongly impact your negotiation abilities. Next, the third big rule for negotiation is mutual options for mutual gain. Like the BATNA, make sure you understand that there are 4 obstacles which you must overcome. Don't make a premature judgment. Don't just search for one answer. Don't assume that you can only get 100 marks in class. Don't assume that there's just a fixed pie. And if you think that solving their problem is their problem alone, that is a problem. So if you have any questions about these, because they are confusing, please ask. I'm just going to fly through some of these things and then make sure you understand the basics. Next, another rule for the getting to yes is to insist on objective criteria. So there's 3 basic points to remember. Frame each negotiation issue as a mutual search for something objective, and be reasonable and open to reason as to which standards should be used and how they should be applied. Next, never bend to pressure, only to principle. Remind you that this is created by the Harvard. And what I would really like is somebody in class to start speaking and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. If you do that, I'll give you 2 extra bonus points, because you're right. It doesn't always make sense. The idea that you should be reason focused, you should be reasonable, that is not an East Asian characteristic. East Asia is focused more on relationships than being reasonable. The North American and European countries, they are more reason-focused or logic-focused countries, not relationship-focused. So if you are saying you have to be the American style, that's kind of bad. So this book is world famous, but it has problems. These are one of the problems. It also has several problems, for example, negotiating with Chinese. When you're negotiating with Chinese, sometimes this says never bend to pressure, but the Chinese, they will pressure you to drink together. And if you're drunk, then they will try negotiating or signing a contract. North Americans think that's illegal or unethical or very bad. You should never have alcohol in contract negotiations. So you must understand those objective criteria depends on who you're working with. North Americans say these. It's better to check who you're actually working with. Next, as I said, with the idea of drinking, many cultures, alcohol is used as a tool to help negotiation. For example, in China and Korea, they often toast constantly. They cheers and drink constantly. If you say no to drinking, that's rude. It's just like being quiet or being silent or not showing the video in our class. Those are rude things. So make sure that you have a reason if you're going to stop drinking. For example, if you have a medical issue or you're taking medicine, something like that, then they will accept that you don't drink, but they will not be happy. Be aware of that. In negotiation situations, drinking alcohol is said to be one of the most important and common ways to promote honesty in Korea and in China. But it's not necessary. It is a tool, and there are bigger, stronger, better tools than using alcohol. Anybody that can tell me what is a better tool to get negotiation success in Korea or China than alcohol, I'll give you more bonus points. I'll give you some hints. Anybody, if you want those bonus points, just start talking out. Next, using the alcohol, the reason is it helps the atmosphere to let people be open-minded, and also drinking with your client makes you friendlier. It develops friendships. The idea that if, for example, if you are a business partner and I want to have a good negotiation with you, if I learn about you, if I learn about your father, your mother, your brother, sister, your wife, your children, and then start talking about your children and maybe give a small little candy or a small drink to your kids, that small relationship makes a much better relationship. That small action makes a much better relationship, and I'm closer to you. That closeness in relations will help your negotiation better than just any money details. So having relationships is better than drinking. And the other way to think of it is, so if we drink together and I get crazy drunk and I vomit on your shoes, yes, you can laugh and we can talk about funny stories. We got drunk together, I vomited on you. That might be a little bit closer, but it's not as good as if I wait a week or 2 weeks and then send you a small gift to give to your mother for her birthday, or give to your daughter or your son for their birthday. Those activities make a much stronger connection and much better negotiation ability than any alcohol and vomit could help.